And so, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who's Donald Chapman. It's not Bruce Parker. Unfortunately, Bruce had a family emergency, so wasn't able to join us. But Donald, who's Chief of Business Development at Modo, is going to talk to us about less isn't more in online payment acceptance. So Donald has a background in payments, many years spent with real-time payments at FIS. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Alan. So Modo was founded around 2010. Our CEO, Bruce Parker, who was supposed to be here today, was the head of payment strategy at FIS, the largest financial services, technology, software provider in the industry. And that's where he and I first connected, actually a few of us that are part of the Modo team. We were seed funded in 2014 by Alliance Data Systems. Alliance Data is the #2 provider of private label credit, as well as marketing and loyalty platforms. In the United States, second to Synchrony Financial, which used to be GE Capital. So that was really the sort of birthing of Modo at that point in time. Then over the last couple of years, or sort of wrapping up last year, we closed a Series A, which was led by our friends at Deutsche Bank most recently, and prior to that, Bank of America. So we service some of the largest players within the payments industry, and talk a little bit about that towards the end. But today, in Bruce's place, and a little bit in Bruce's honor, wanted to show you a little bit of a lesson on payments. I think a lot of you will understand or catch on to some of the themes here. Probably not a lot of things that are completely new to you, but wanted to do a little bit of a level set, because we also have a panel coming up where we'll be excited to get into some of the questions and do a little bit of deeper dive and discussion around some of the topics that we'll cover here. So the title of today's session is the ABCs of checkout. So acceptance is really what payments are all about. Anytime someone's going to accept a payment, whether that's for e-commerce or mobile commerce, you have to consider what methods of payments are most important. I thought this was an interesting slide in that number 1 and 2 would have been flipped if I had to guess, but the data doesn't lie, as they say, correct? So accepting mobile wallets is obviously very important. Cards, don't think anybody would question or doubt that fact, but there's significant interest in a number of different methods of payment that follow thereafter. And when we think about this on a geographic basis or on a per geography basis, Europe specifically, there are a number of different options, whether it's things like billing later or invoice payments, et cetera, that make a big difference. And if you provide commerce across borders, it's very pertinent and relevant to make sure that you cover all of the different methods of payment that your customers are going to want to leverage to pay with, right? So at the end of each section, we'll do a quick little lesson here, right? So the lesson learned here, hey, you need to be able to accept whatever your customer wants, right? Not a huge insight there, but it's something very much sort of stay focused on the simple things, right? We in the United States have a saying, keep it simple, stupid, right? KISS. Buying is next, right? Again, you want to accept a payment, there's a transaction going on, and that's what enables commerce. But friction in commerce is a really big deal. That's a massive number that you'll see up there in this statistic, and it's something we look to help our partners solve for. Our good friends over at Adyen were kind enough to provide some market data that I think is very pertinent to this conversation. We talked about some of the different methods of payments that need to be accepted, the fact that accepting payment can mean a lot of different things, or there are a lot of different elements that come into play there, right? The simplicity of that experience. And while Modo does not provide a user experience itself, providing the infrastructure that supports those user experiences and supports that experience that our merchants and that our partners very much take to heart and hold very closely is a key element of the value that we're bringing to the market. So the lesson for the buying section is all about This being the point of what a payment is, right? Again, very boiled down sort of principles we're talking about here. So with respect to conversion, conversion is a key topic. It was very nice to see this is not actually by a payments company. Our friends over at Forrester did identify, though, that payments are the number one. They're sort of that top thing. So it's rather exciting when you are, we're sort of self-proclaimed payments geeks. Hashtag payments geek is a moniker we've done a lot of t-shirt making and branding around. But to see that payments is a number one thing, and it's key when you talk about enabling commerce. So another large number up here, and when we talk about conversions and the effect that improving conversions can have on the top line and bottom line for any business, these are things we want to make sure that people are staying focused on, and again, ties back to the value proposition we'll talk a little bit more specific to Modo, because if you're not converting, then you're not making any money. D is for declines and disputes. So we'll definitely get into the weeds a little bit on this one. False positives are your declines, right? So it's exceptional when we talk to some merchants who see, and there was a presentation earlier this morning in Potsdam 1, actually, and I think they quoted around 86% of e-commerce transactions get approved. That's about 14%. We've talked with merchants that have 20, 30% decline rates, which is amazing. So thinking about how do you take those false positives, how do you turn them into auths, how do you capture those funds, how do you close those sales is very important for all of the people we work with. When you think about disputes, these are tough, right? These are expensive, they take time, it's a challenge within the industry. Our friends over at Chargebacks 911 are doing a great job working with many merchants and helping to change the face of this game a little bit, but a piece of perspective that I think is a key baseline thing to think about when we're talking about commerce and checkouts, both from an e-commerce and mobile commerce perspective. So don't turn away your customers. Give them everything or do everything you can in your power to make sure that they get approved and continue to drive your revenue. Errors, exceptions, and refunds for the second to last category here. This one was interesting, right? $400 million in sales, but $385 million in returns. That's probably one of the more interesting balance sheets or financial reports that you'd ever read. But it's a real thing. And thinking about how all of these different exceptions truly affect your bottom line in your business and the cost of what that means, whether it's from a technical perspective and the folks that you're putting in to deal with these things, as well as the analysts, right? The people that are fingers on keyboards having to figure out, reconcile, and deal with these sorts of issues. These are real problems, and they're expensive problems that the industry deals with. And it should cost less. Last section for today will be around fraud and fees. So with respect to fees, merchants pay a substantial amount of money to process a given transaction. Some areas of the world it's regulated and a little bit lower. Other areas it's a little bit higher cost, and a lot of that is built around some of the issues with fraud and exceptions, authentication, et cetera, right? The power of Visa and MasterCard on a global basis has been proven for decades and decades, and there's studies that talk to the increased GDP, the increased velocity of money these digital forms of payment have been able to bring to the market, and I think continued innovation will continue to drive some of this. Again, there's a substantial amount of fraud in the industry. These are a couple numbers or data points that I think are pertinent, but fraud is something that everybody needs to be concerned about, and fees, less is better, right? We don't want to, or we want to help minimize those sorts of elements within our payments flows. This is a little bit of Modo humor. We are big on sarcasm. I don't know that I quite deliver it as well as some of the folks I work with, but they do keep a smile on your face on a day-in, day-out basis. So if you're ever up for engaging Modo in that respect, you will learn a lot about it. So the ABCs of checkouts for today, we covered a few key topics, and we want to tie those back really to the value and what Modo's platform is all about. So there are some baseline questions we really encourage the folks we work with to think about, and how merchants interact with their payments infrastructure, how they sort of optimize that payment stack, if you will, across fraud, across declines, across all of the different issues that they need to manage on a day in, day out, and really on a minute-by-minute basis at scale across borders, is something we at Modo take very seriously. I'm going to, hopefully this will play a video for you here. Excellent. So you have all sorts of different providers in the world, the PSPs, and they all have different semantics, syntax, structure, state to connectivity, having to do with the connectivity to their platforms, right? You don't connect to one and it's not exactly the same as the next. Modo is helping to provide not just that connectivity, but orchestrate that secure exchange of data between these different platforms. Manage that workflow between the different systems, whether those are the merchants' systems, and we're talking about ERPs, whether those are the acquirers and the processor systems, whether those are business intelligence, data, analytics, and fraud. There's a plethora of things that need to be tied together and work seamlessly with each other in order to enable frictionless checkout experiences. No one provider has been able to rule them all. And don't think of Modo necessarily as a provider of any single one of these services, but as a platform to create interoperability across all of these different services. And again, excited to share a little bit more with you all when we get into the panel around some of the details and the innovation we're bringing to this. The ultimate point, all of those different services that are pertinent to the payments market or marketplace for payment services, that's what Modo's looking to connect. As I said, we work with some of the largest players of the industry. They're taking advantage of the marketplace of payments that Modo has connected. We continue to grow on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-over-month basis, and we'd be excited to talk with any of the folks here about their payments issues that might relate to some of the topics that we've brought up today. The power of that marketplace that we're talking about is really to help everybody that we work with drive revenue, cut costs, and create those experiences that their customers love. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll also be available after the session. Cheers.